Hello Year 9s and welcome back to Mathematics. In today's lesson, what I'm going to be covering is the next section in your learning from home booklets. In this part of the topic, we're looking at a thing called trigonometric ratios. And I'm going to introduce to you what these trigonometric ratios are. Now, in this topic so far, we've been looking at right-angled triangles. And the first thing that we looked at was Pythagoras' theorem. So just a quick recap of what Pythagoras' theorem told us. What Pythagoras' theorem told us was if we have a right-angled triangle, there's a relationship between the side lengths of the triangle triangle. So the first side length we need to be careful of is this longest side length, which is called the hypotenuse. And it's a side that is opposite the right angle. And we call this C. And then we've got our other two sides, which we call A and B. And the relationship between the three sides that we saw from Pythagoras' theorem was that if we square the hypotenuse, that is equal to when we square the two shorter sides and then add them together. So this is what Pythagoras' theorem told me. There's a relationship between the three side lengths of a right angled triangle. However, we might not just be interested in looking at the side lengths. Sometimes we might be interested at looking at the angles inside my triangle as well. And so that's what this next section of our topic of right angled triangles will cover. We're going to look at a thing called trigonometry. Now here, I've got trigonometry. And now trigonometry comes from a Greek word which just means the study of things with three sides. Here in particular, you can see the word tri at the start of the word, and that just is the same prefix that you see in the word triangle. And so here we're actually just studying it's a study of three angled shapes, and in particular triangles. So here what we're doing in fact is we're looking at the right angled triangles again. And in particular, we're looking at the relationship between the angles in the triangles. So we're looking at the relationship between the angles in the triangles and the side lengths. So when you have a look at these right angled triangles, there's actually going to be some relationships that we can form with the angles of our triangle and the side lengths. Now what I'm going to do in this first video is just go in this video and this section is go through a few parts that we need to note before we can actually even look at these relationships. So the first thing that we actually do is we're going to figure out what we're going to name the three sides. We have a special naming convention that we use for these three sides. Now, right here I've got my right angled triangle. And so with my right angled triangle, I've got my right angle in the bottom right, as you can see. But when we're dealing with trigonometry, we're looking at the angles, right? So what we want to do is we want to look at the relationship between one of the other angles and the side. So for example, let's choose this angle over here. Now I'm going to give this angle a name, and this is a Greek letter, and it's called theta. Now this thing here, this is like a circle. I have like a big O and it loops back on itself. This is just theta. Now this is a Greek letter. And it's used when we're trying to talk about an unknown angle. So this is for an unknown angle. So if we're dealing with angles, often we'll use this Greek letter theta to describe the unknown angle. And if you remember from before, what I had up here was when we looked at Pythagoras' theorem, we had our three sides, a hypotenuse, and we had our two shorter sides. In trigonometry, all three sides have a certain name depending on where this angle is. So if you have a look here, my theta is down at the bottom there. But I could also have theta up at the top, and that will actually change what my three sides are called. Now, before I actually do that, let me show you what the names of the three sides are. Now, the first side is a side that I always usually start out with when I'm naming my three sides, and a side that you also know the name of. It's a hypotenuse. The hypotenuse doesn't change. It's the side that's directly opposite my right angle, and this side over here, so this side over here, it's called it's a hypotenuse. And to represent the hypotenuse, instead of using C, we're now going to use a big H, because hypotenuse starts with a H, and so we're going to use a H for this side. So H for hypotenuse. Okay, now there's two other sides of my right angled triangle. The next one I'm going to show you is called the opposite side. Now the opposite side is opposite to the angle that I'm given. So it's opposite theta. So if you have a look, I've got theta over here, and I'm going to look at the side that's opposite theta. So if you have a look, I'm going to draw a line. This side over here, this vertical side here, is going to be my opposite side. So this is opposite. So you can think of it as opposite theta, opposite angle theta. And just because we want to show that it's the opposite side, we're just going to call it O for opposite. Okay, and then there's one final side, and as you probably recall, this is one of our short sides as well. Now this side here, we call this the adjacent side. So let me just write here, adjacent side to theta. We just shorthand it to adjacent, and the meaning of adjacent is just next to. So if you're adjacent to someone, you're just next to them. So adjacent just means next to, and for adjacent side, we're going to call it A. And so here, when we're dealing with trigonometry, we first need to figure out where our angle is, and then be able to name the three sides of my right angle triangle based on where this angle is. And so we've got those three sides. The hypotenuse, you usually start, if you're trying to name the three sides of your triangle, you want to start out with the hypotenuse. It's the easiest one to do. It's opposite the right angle. So the hypotenuse is opposite the right angle. Then there's the opposite side, which is opposite the angle theta, or the missing angle that you're dealing with. And then there's the third side, the adjacent side, which is the one that's right next to, or the final side in your triangle. Okay.